We're going to start with Dr. Prakash Krishnan, who is the director from Mount Sinai Cardiac Catheterization Laboratories and assistant professor of medicine at the Mount Sinai Hospital Center. And he's going to talk to us on drug delivery therapies for peripheral arterial disease.
Thank you very much, Emmanuel. I'd like to thank the organizers, Dr. Banerjee, and obviously Dr. Verlakis as well, for having me. And it's a real honor to come and spend some time with you talking about drug delivery for PAD, because this has been really a great leap for us in terms of how we treat these patients. So to jump right into it, there are the types of drug-eluting devices that I'm going to talk about are the currently available and what we're using day to day, just to go over some of the data that's available with it. So currently we have drug-coated balloons and a drug-coated stent, and the exact names of these, the stents is the Zilver PTX, the second one is in trial, which I'm just going to skim over. The drug-coated balloons, the Impact balloon is an approved balloon, as well as the Lutonix balloon, and the Stellarex balloon has completed its study, and we're waiting for the data from that in America. So as far as drug-coated balloons, I guess when you look at where we're using drug-coated therapies currently in the peripheral arterial disease, it really is in the superficial femoral artery, and the rationale is very simple: the anatomy. Those of you who've done SFA interventions know that the FemPop is really a bad conduit for implants. And if you think about it logically, the rationale for first choice of an implant would be something that you don't leave behind. It avoids ISR. It hopefully will not burn any bridges. And the reason is because of the anatomic, I guess, configuration of the SFA or the dynamics that the SFA goes through, including torsion, flexion, compression, and bending. And the ISR recurrence is obviously quite high. And also the rationale is the patient. PAD is a chronic, lifelong issue, and unfortunately we don't have that silver bullet at this stage to say that we can cure this patient. So therefore, the FemPop is the predominant culprit vessel in claudicants, and claudicants generally tend to have a long life, at least a long limb, because amputations are very low in claudicants, but really you want to give them a high quality of life. And you also want to preserve the wide options for the future and the long-term reinterventions. If there's some new technology, you may not want to burn a bridge by leaving an implant behind. So just jumping into it, the two ones that are currently available, the Impact Admiral balloon and the Lutonix balloon, and the drug is paclitaxel, so in both, but the two differences is the paclitaxel dose is a 3.5 microgram per millimeter squared in the Impact and 2 microgram per millimeter squared in the Lutonix balloon. The other thing is the excipient. So the dose and the excipient are sort of like the secret sauce that differentiates these two balloons, and you'll start to see as I present the data, they work differently. Although you can't compare trials, the data looks a little different. So pretty much everything is a balloon, the sizes, and the drug is the same, but the doses and the excipient are the two things that really differentiate these two balloons. Now, if you look at the baseline characteristics, again, important things is what I'm going to focus on. If you look at the lesion length, generally speaking, in a real-world treat, the patients that we all treat are really not this small. The average lesion length in the Impact balloon was 8.9 centimeters, and in the Lutonix balloon was 6.27. And you can see calcification also, which is very common in this particular vessels that we treat, is also been kind of not really looked at in this particular trial because it's an IDE trial. So if you look at other important things is the clinical endpoints are important. And the clinical endpoints for both trials were very, very similar, except you also have to look at the PSVR ratios to understand what they were. And you can see here the DUS PSVR in the freedom from restenosis in the Impact trial was 2.4, and also it was less than 2.5 in the Levant trial. They also followed freedom from clinically driven TLR, which could be a subjective thing, but however they did follow it. And in the Impact trial, it showed revascularization due to return of symptoms, drop of ABI, TBI of greater than 20% or greater than 0.15, and compared to pre-post procedure TBI. And in the other one, they also showed pretty much the same thing, except they added some clinical symptoms, such as new distal ischemic signs, worsening ABI, or Rutherford categories. So this is kind of the endpoints. So if you look at the primary patencies of the two trials, again, I'm not comparing, just want to let you know, because I really don't believe you can compare two trials. If you look at the Impact SFA was around 89.8%, and the Levant 2 trial was 73.5% at 1 year. Both of these have been presented multiple times, peer-reviewed, and both are published currently. And if you look at the 12-month TLR rates, the impact balloon actually had a very low TLR rate at 2.4% versus 12.3% in the Levant 2 trial. Again, significantly having a better benefit as compared to standalone PTA, which again was used and is still being used in our practice today. Now, what about durability? Like I told you, this is a lifelong disease. We have patients who are going to be chronic, PAD patients, and are we going to bring them back? So we now have durability data for both, and I know that the impact data has been presented and published. The Levant 2 data has been presented, so I'm just going to go ahead and show it to you. So the durable primary patency results through 2 years in the impact showed a difference of 78.9% by ultrasound criteria versus 50.1% in the balloon arm. And then if you see the freedom from TLR, this also maintained out to 2 years. 91% in the impact SFA or the drug-coated balloon arm in the impact balloon versus 72.2% in the angioplasty alone arm. So if you look at the effectiveness outcome through 2 years, and if you look at impact versus PTA, you can see clinical interval TLR was 9.1% versus 28.3%. And again, they had a sustained clinical improvement, and also the ABI TBIs were also not different. It's important to just talk about that because these patients in the plain old balloon angioplasty arm underwent more procedures to maintain their ABI TBIs unchanged as compared to the impact balloon. Now, if you look at the Levant 2 endpoints at 24 months, and you can see this was presented data, I don't believe it's been published yet, you could see that it still remains non-inferior and really trends towards superior versus PTA. But you can see that it was 78.7% at 2 years and 70.9% for the standard angioplasty arm. And you can see, again, if you look at the patency as defined by ultrasound, it showed about a 10.5% improvement over the PTA. And again, this is again showing that the drug is working out to 2 years. So again, I think that Dr. Das is going to talk about future, but you can see that the Stellarex balloon is also being studied along with the Lutonix and the impact balloon, which has already been studied. And they all are undergoing multi-center core lab adjudicated trials, which are really going to give us a lot of information on the efficacy and the safety of these balloons. So what about long-term data? Now, I told you that it works in randomized controlled trials and perfect patients, but if you look at long-term data, this have been registries mostly in the Impact Global study as well as in the Lutonix study, and I'm just going to go through this. And the reason for this was to really see if these patients or these products work in real-world patients. So again, it's multi-center, core lab adjudicated, and pretty much controlled where you have prospective subset analysis. But the beauty of one of them, the impact registry, they actually have looked at what is it called, lesion occlusions, in-stent restenosis, longer lesion length. And what they broke it down is they also have an imaging cohort. So you actually are going to have ultrasound data in these patients in these more difficult lesions, or what we call as real-world lesions. So if you go through this here, if you look at the lesion length, it jumped up from 8.7% to 26.4%. 71% were calcified, out of which 20% were severely calcified. And you can also see the provisional stent rates, which I didn't talk about in the IDE trial, was 8%, jumped up to 40%. And you can see the lesions length, long lesions greater than 25 centimeters were 52.6%. So you can see that these patients are real world, kind of what you and I are treating. So it's very important to look at this. So if you look at primary patency rates at 360 days was 91.1%, showing that, again, you're having a balloon that works even in the longest lesions. And then if you look at the patency in the non-stented group, that was all comers, stented and non-stented. In the non-stented group, it was basically 92.5%. And if you look at long lesion cohort alone, it went down to 91. But if you look at just by lesion length, there still seemed to be an effect of the lesion, the length of the lesion on patency. So you can see in the shorter lesions, or 15 to 25 centimeters, which is not necessarily short, but definitely shorter compared to greater than 25 centimeters, you can see it was 97.7% versus 79.2%. Again, it just showed that there was a consistent impact or effect of the drug throughout the long lesions, short lesions, and showing that it may actually be useful in our practice for sure. So quickly over drug-eluting stents, the one drug-eluting stent that's currently approved is the Zilver PTX, is a nitinol stent. The interesting thing here is that there is no polymer as compared to the Luvia, which Dr. Das will just mention. And in that one here, it's basically, it's a sprayed-on paclitaxel at 3 micrograms per millimeters squared, and there was no polymer or binder. And you can see here the Zilver PTX randomized controlled trial. It has 5-year results associated with it. Just briefly, these patients were in a complicated enrollment headed by Dr. Dake. If you look at enrollment here, they were primary randomized to angioplasty versus Zilver PTX. If they didn't have optimal PTA, they called it suboptimal PTA. They were randomized again into BMS or Zilver PTX. So this way, you had 2 ways to look at whether it was a standard of care, which in today's day and age, most of us, balloon angioplasty, and then go ahead and place a stent. So they wanted it to compare to both, whether you used a stent or you didn't use a stent. So you can see here that, again, if you look at 5-year freedom from TLR, provisional Zilver PTX versus just bare metal stent, 84.9% versus 71.6%. Again, a 47% reduction for reintervention compared to bare metal stenting. And then if you look at it just as standard of care, which is Zilver PTX versus optimal PTA plus BMS, again, this also continued to show the significant reduction in restenosis compared to standard of care. Again, if you look at the 5-year primary patency by PSVR, this also held through, as you can see the numbers there. And then you can also see the clinical index or the clinical benefit. Did the patients feel better? Absolutely, they felt better, and you improved their lives out to 5 years. So if you look at the real-world Zilver data, these lesion lengths were much shorter, again, like they were in the bare metal. Currently, there's a single-arm study, and there's also the Zilver PTX Japanese study, which I think really is more real-world than what was done here. So you can see in the Japanese study, which I'll just go over briefly, all patients were treated with Zilver. There was no exclusion. There was no enrollment limit and no exclusion criteria, and these patients are going to be followed up to 5 years. And the patency is basically a site analysis. That's probably the only thing. There's no correlab, but I'm just going to present it. As you can see, there's a 14.7% lesion length compared to 6.6 in the Zilver, and you can see in-stent restenosis is 19% versus 0, and calcification we'll get to in a second. Again, it showed that the stent continues to work at 6 months, 1 year, and the 5-year follow-up is still to be determined. And you can see whether it's via duplex ultrasonography or clinically driven reasons you're intervening on this patient, it does show superiority over the bare metal stent. Excuse me, it's not moving. So the difference between the DCB and the DES trials seems to be calcification. So if you look at calcified lesions and the Lutonix, the impacts, as well as compared to the Zilver PTX or the drug-coated stent trial, you can see that the drug-coated stent trial seemed to enroll more calcific lesions, showing that maybe in these type of lesions, which are really very difficult to treat, maybe a scaffolding may not be an unreasonable thing, given the data that you have showing with the efficacy of this particular device. So the other question with stents is stent fracture, and I just want to briefly put this up. If you look at stent fracture at 1 year, 3 year, 5 years, with the Zilver PTX randomized controlled trial with almost 500 stents, it seems to bottom out around 1.2%. 1.9%, showing that it's around 2% fracture rate. Does occur, not very alarming, but clearly does occur, so that's something you need to keep in mind. So in conclusion, drug-coated balloons and drug-eluting stents are growing as the desired therapy for treatment of chronic and burdensome diseases like PAD. Drug-coated balloon technologies are still evolving, and we need to really learn more about better drug transfer efficacy, higher coating stability, and limited embolization. We're in the early part of our learning curve here. The evidence and quality does exist to really say that we may have a benchmark here, and most drug-coated balloons and drug-eluting stents have really passed their initial test. We've done randomized trials, multi-center trials, and we're able to really know that they do work and that they're safe. The important thing to remember is there is no class effect. Each drug-coated balloon should be really taken at its own merits, and you need to analyze, what fits into your practice. And really, we're really in an exciting time because there are newer drug-eluting stents being studied right now. The Imperial study is being done, as well as the Stellarex trial or the Levant 2 trial will be done very soon. So again, I appreciate for your time. Thank you.